I didn't think we'd get much new from Jurassic World Rebirth now that the final trailer is out, but a bunch of new stuff has emerged over the past few days. We've got 3 pretty interesting topics to cover, escalating in interestingness. Let's get started. The first piece of news is that we finally have a sighting of the Velociraptors in the film. Ish. Sort of, well, not really, but also really. A bunch of behind the scenes images show off the dino gang as they filmed at the convenience store, petrol station, gas station sort of scene. The same scene which has them attacked by mutodons soon after. Before that though, an old classic has returned, raptor heads on sticks. This is a common technique used in these films and many others for 2 reasons. It gives actors something physical to react to, which is always helpful, and it gives a rough spot for the CGI to be added in post-production. So what's going on in this scene? Well, the rumours suggest that the group are going to come across the raptors at the store, fight to survive for a time before the raptors are scared off by those encroaching mutodons, which are, at the end of the day, bigger, thicker, tougher raptors, and one of them will kill a raptor in that process. This is of course a pretty common literary technique of introducing a threat, establishing how dangerous that threat is, and then having it quickly taken out by something even spookier. Kind of like the Fat Official and the Penetrator in Demon Souls, although if we're honest, the Penetrator was an absolute pushover as well, despite the name. Unfortunately then, it seems the raptors, despite their pretty incredible new design, aren't really going to get much screen time in Jurassic World Rebirth. By all accounts, this may well be their only scene in the entire film, and there's so many dinosaurs to fit into the film that I don't necessarily think that's an issue. I just hope that they and this same design make a reappearance later on in the film series. It would feel like a big waste if this is all we ever got from this raptor design. But of course, there may be some more secrets out there. We'll have to wait for the film itself. In today's news, we may finally know the name of Rebirth's as of yet unnamed dinosaur island. It's been a long time coming, this one. Now, a couple of weeks ago, GamePress data mined Jurassic World Alive, Ludia's mobile Jurassic game. And that just means they dug into the files. There was a new update, the game updated, and they dug into the files, they cracked it open, and had a little rummage around to see what they could find. And it revealed an upcoming event called Isle of Trials. Not only does this take place on an island, much like Rebirth does, but the event text makes reference to the DRex. And 2 weeks later, the event is still not in the game. It's likely being held back for the release of the film. More importantly though, the text makes reference to an island name. Now this should technically be in French. I'm going to say it in French first, and then I'm going to do it in English because I'm going to butcher the French. But it'll be Ils sont au bas? Ils sont au bas? The island of Saint Hubert. This doesn't mean it won't have an in-world name or classification, of course. They could call it Site C or Site A or whatever they want to call it. But the name does make a lot of sense. We know Rebirth is taking place on the other side of the Americas this time, on the east coast of South America. And a lot of islands around there have very Christian-sounding names because of rampant colonization from the east. You got San Kitts and Nevis, San Lucia, San Vincent, and they're all in this immediate area, so it's a very common naming philosophy for that part of the world. Now, of course, it appearing in Alive doesn't necessarily guarantee it is the exact same island as Rebirth, so do take this with a pinch of salt. But it certainly seems very, very likely. Hubert was a real saint, Hubert of Liege, and he's the patron saint of archers, dogs, forest workers, hunting, and huntsmen. He's outdoorsy, and he's venerated still before hunts because he's seen as the originator of quote-unquote ethical hunting behaviour and also ethical treatment of animals. Now, I don't want to stretch the meaning of this too far, especially while it's unconfirmed, but if this is true, it's likely the name was chosen as an ironic contrast with the wanton experimentation and disregard for animal welfare that's being displayed by InGen in their experimentations on this island with the creation of the things like the DRex. I think that's a pretty logical way to connect the two, but we'll have to watch this space. I think this could well be the island name, but we'll keep an eye on this as we go forward. It's a Hiplobonoxa for sharing this, the alert to this on the Jurassic Park subreddit. Now, speaking of the DRex, we may finally have some evidence as to its origins, as to why it was created. Now, if you go back through my videos, I even talked about this in our trailer video just the other day, you'll have heard me say this a few times. that I believe the DRex was a early iteration, an early experimentation to create the Indominus Rex. They've both got Tyrannosaurus Rex as their sort of basal dinosaur. The timeline fits perfectly because the Indominus Rex was created in 2012. The DRex scene from the start of Rebirth takes place in 2010. They're both very big boys. And finally, it was always the arms for me. Picking up humans, turning them around, utilizing their hands and their grip in this way is a very unique thing among animals in this franchise. And yet it just happens to be something that both the DRex and the iRex do. That alone maybe wouldn't have been enough, but we do have a little bit more evidence for this theory now. Now, if we go back and look at this image from Captive's Toys, you'll see we've got two versions of the DRex. That isn't too surprising, one could be a special edition, but I do think this lends a little more credence as well to the idea that one is a younger version, the one that we see in the lab in 2010, and one is a later, larger one from those 2027 scenes. I still personally think the lab version is quite a bit smaller than the one we see later on. I know some people disagree with that, but I'm right. Anyway, further support for that is this. If we zoom in specifically on this rare flocked edition, you'll see what looks pretty unmistakably like feathering, fur, quills along the back of the DRex. Maybe not enough on its own. Now we've got the full images for these captive cards, and if you go and take a peek at the DRex card, well, this thing definitely has quills. I'm not sure if they're present on the later iteration, but at least one version of the DRex definitely appears to have quills along its upper neck. It's worth noting, if you go back and watch the film, this is an area of the creature we simply don't see in the shots so far. I think they're being held back. Perhaps the younger DRex sheds these quills with age. But you know what else has quills in the exact same area? The Indominus Rex. This could all be a coincidence, but I'm very doubtful at this point. They've been able to successfully make Tyrannosaurus Rexes since the birth of Rexy in 1988. How would they have gotten it so wrong 22 years later in 2010? They just wouldn't. You could call it a random mutation, but instead I think they were trying to create something new with that T-Rex as a base. They were trying to create something hybridized, and they messed up. This is ground zero for Jurassic's experimentation, and it means we get the weirder, malformed versions of what would come later. So Masrani acquires InGen, and that means he acquires the island at the same time. He then goes and establishes a lab, and the idea is to study hybridization before it's ready for Isla Nublar. And that would make a lot of sense, especially because Sorna at this point has already been ravaged. I think the timeline here makes a lot of sense, but I'd love to know what you think. Unless you think that I'm being daft, in which case just keep it to yourself, Diane, okay? Nobody needs to hear it. Anyways, that is it from me. I think we're onto something here, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little mention of this in the film, just something about like the Indominus Rex project or the Eye project, or just some little reference as to what they're trying to create in that 2010 scene, even if it never becomes much more than just like a little Easter egg for fans like us to, you know, look out for. We'll have to wait and see. Let me know what you think down below. I'll see you lovely folks very, very soon. Thanks for joining me. Throw me a like, blah, 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 blah. Cheers, much love as always. Bye-bye.
Road.